Welcome back to Left Coast News, the show that tells it like it is when the political class and the bureaucratic handmaidens get caught red-handed. Today we're ripping apart another example of government incompetence masked as climate virtue signaling, this time from the very bureaucrats who claimed billions in public spending was saving the planet right here in Washington state.
Thanks for tuning in to leftcoastnews.net. News and information from the wacky, sometimes communist, liberal west coast of the United States. For more, visit leftcoastnews.net.
So the scandal? I don't know if you've heard about this, but last month, Washington's Department of Ecology and the Department of Commerce released a much-touted report claiming that nearly 9 million metric tons of CO₂ emissions had been avoided thanks to state spending under the Climate Commitment Act. That's the state's CO₂ cap and invest, or carbon tax program. They said it was like taking 40% of all gas and diesel cars off the road for a year and claim of worthy headlines. However, the Washington Policy Center did some digging and found out that, well, it wasn't true. It turns out about 86% of those claimed emission reductions were probably fake, blown up by simple data entry errors and unverified assumptions. Yes, 86%. That means the vast majority of the climate benefit that the state boasted about was essentially made up. So how were the numbers screwed up exactly? The error stemmed from a tiny subset of projects, 8 grants out of thousands that were reporting CO₂ reductions at implausibly low costs. One city, Ellensburg, supposedly reduced 3.5 million tons of CO₂ from 170 heat pump upgrades. That's impossible math, the equivalent on paper of eliminating 60% of all residential CO₂ emissions in the entire state from a handful of home upgrades. When corrected to more realistic figures, the total measurable CO₂ reduced collapses from nearly 9 million tons to 1.2 million tons, just 14% of the original claim. That's not a rounding error, that's a full-blown statistical collapse. So to their credit, and only after being called out in public and in the media, the Department of Commerce admitted the data was wrong, swapping 7.5 million tons for 78,000 tons of actual reductions. Essentially nothing. But here's the outrage. The Department of Ecology didn't even notice the error itself. An outside critic, Todd Myers of the Washington Policy Center, flagged the absurdity before anyone in state government did. And even after being notified, Ecology didn't promptly fix the problem or explain it. That's not competence, that is negligence. So why does this matter? This isn't just bureaucratic incompetence, this is government propaganda in service of more taxes and mandates. Washington's CO₂ tax, known as the Climate Commitment Act, CCA, has already generated billions in revenue from cap and trade auctions, with taxpayers paying to the tune of billions of dollars for allowances to pollute. And yet, they oversold the effectiveness of that program by nearly an order of magnitude. They can't even track the actual environmental impact of multi-billion-dollar spending, and they rely on dubious calculations that make heat pumps appear more effective than physics allows. That's not science, that's political messaging disguised as environmental policy. Oh, but we always follow the science in this state, right? Here's the constitutional crux. Government should not tax and spend on the basis of fairy tales. If you are going to levy taxes and impose market interventions, you must prove they work and do not trample on liberty or economic well-being. Instead, we are asked to accept a $1.5 billion spending spree that can't prove its climate results, a bureaucracy that can't check its own math, and politicians touting fake successes to justify more power. Folks, this is the exact opposite of transparent, limited government. This is climate religion dressed up in spreadsheets. So what can we do about this? Demand independent audits of climate spending, tie any future environmental spending to verified outcomes, not hand-wavy projections, insist that public policy serve taxpayers, not press releases, and above all, push back against policies like the Climate Commitment Act that burden families, small businesses, and workers without delivering on their promises. Just because the state likes to throw fancy numbers around doesn't mean those numbers reflect reality. And now we've got a glaring proof of that. Well, that's today's Left Coast News. If you're tired of bureaucrats cooking the books while they lecture you about your carbon footprint, stay tuned. We'll keep calling it out because good government demands accountability, not excuses. Stay free, stay skeptical, and always demand the truth. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard here today, please like, share, and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time on Left Coast News.